Welcome back in. Week 0, 2 teams with realistic playoff aspirations and what could perhaps be the most consequential game of Week 0. It's Memphis at UNLV, a sneaky important one that could be discussed heavily at the end of the season when deciding who gets in the final bracket. So those are the stakes. These are the analysts. Chip Patterson, Beanie Wells with us. Guys, there's so many storylines with this game. It's also the debut of Charles Huff, the new Memphis head coach, with Ryan Silverfield now off to Arkansas. Chip, what does the former Marshall head coach bring to West Tennessee?
Oh, I think that number one, there is a success record that is there in such a small sample size. We're talking about a head coach who for the third time in the last 5 seasons is in a year 1 at a new place. And all he did at Marshall was win the Sun Belt. And at Southern Miss, he led a big turnaround, got them to 7-5. And at Memphis, you're like, okay, so we're signing up for winning right off the bat. We're signing up for a bowl game. But at Memphis, you want to compete for championships. And I think that's where Charles Huff gets to lean on his experience coming up through the ranks, all the different championship contention and championship contending squads that he's been a part of, to understand what it's going to take, because Memphis is objectively one of the more resource-rich programs at the Group of 6 level. And so you've got, with the right personality, the ability to accumulate talent and then try to go out and out-execute your opponent on Saturdays. So for Memphis, getting together with Charles Huff, you are getting someone who understands how to build a roster when given the resources and a program that can give him those resources. I'm a big buyer in Huff making Memphis not just a contender right away, but an annual contender in the American.
Look, this is going to be a tall task for Charles Huff. I mean, when you go to a program like Memphis, like you mentioned, Chip, they are, resource rich, but nonetheless, when you talk about getting nearly 80 guys on a roster and having the expectation of having those guys ready to go out and win you a football game week 0, I think that's a tall order right there, especially when you're going against a team like UNLV. Now, I do believe Charles Huff can be a fantastic coach. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for him to get this Memphis program running under his operation and operating how we saw past teams do under his tutelage. But it's going to be a tall task week 0 to ask him to go out and win this football game, getting all of these guys to jail right now. I think everybody's wanting that Kirk Cinetti type story where you come from a smaller program and you have an immediate impact. Well, that's not an easy thing to do. The transfer portal helps, but man, this is a lot of players to ask that from.
Yeah, big difference from the Kurt Cignetti situation. Indiana did not win a lot of football games. Memphis has been bowl eligible for 12 straight seasons, the longest streak right now in the Group of 6. But you mentioned just the changes. I mean, the Tigers returned 1 starter from last season. They signed 53 transfers. So this team is largely unknown. And Huff actually addressed the new realities of announcing starters early. Let's take a listen.
I know the fans want to know. So does UNLV. Yeah, so does UNLV. I was telling Terrence earlier, there's more to this now than there was 10 years ago. If I announce that Johnny's a starter, his agent's going to call. The backup agent is calling him, saying, hey, I can get you out of there. Is that going to happen Saturday? Yeah, but let's at least get to Saturday.
Yeah, guys, first he was talking about gamesmanship, which is not a new reality of college football, right? He doesn't want UNLV to know. But then it kind of went into this new thing of being worried about losing a backup if you name somebody else a starter. Beanie, how much truth is there to what he's describing?
I think that's the new age of college football. It's no longer a situation to where you're just, managing your roster. You actually have to manage this quarterback competition, and you can't initially name a starter before it's too late because you do have to worry about guys transferred. And the quarterback position is the most marquee position in all of sports. So you have to have a little bit of delicacy as you manage and operate and figure out who's going to be the guy leading the charge for your program. It's a new day and age, and it's a scary situation. I'd hate to be a coach having to dumb down what I want to do in terms of naming a starter just because I have to worry about somebody leaving if they don't like the decision I make.
I think that it is a great challenge for head coaches right now to have to really manage, and I mean manage, your roster, your position battles, every room, to understand the personalities and the way they're interacting with each other. And maybe at Memphis it is a little bit tougher because you're in that middle ground, right, where you are near the top of the group of 6, but you ain't in the power conference. And so Charles Huff is probably worried both ways, players that might transfer up or players that might transfer down. But I think that that is the challenge that Charles Huff and every coach in the entire country has, is that you've got to be sure that you are crystal clear with your communication with all of your players. And so coaching salaries have climbed a lot year over year over year over year. Emily, I'm okay if we're putting a little bit more on their plate. And what we're putting on their plate is you've got to know these guys inside and out, and you've got to be able to manage their expectations so that you don't deal with a player or a position group or half of your roster checking out by the start of November.
As they say, that is what the money is for. But yeah, as you mentioned, Chip, it's not just worrying about the backups, especially if you're playing at the group of 6 level. You're worried about losing starters at this point. So it's all about just trying to be in the now and win games. But on the other side of things, not a new head coach, but we saw year 1 of Dan Mullen, double-digit wins, a berth in the conference championship game. Chip, how are things looking for year 2?
I think they're looking great. Obviously, changes in the conference as you get to see some of those conference title contenders moving on to the Pac-12, which means UNLV jumps right to the front of the line. And the belief within that UNLV community is that this is one of the standards in the new Mountain West Conference, that they should go into not just 2026, but every single season looking to go compete for trophies. And Dan Mullen is the kind of coach that should be counted on to be able to go get it done. I mean, we talked about all the transfers that Memphis has this year. That is what Dan Mullen's roster was like last year, and now he was able to say, look what I was able to deliver. He's got a little bit more continuity, you know, a player like Jaden Thomas, great running back, who's able to show you, this is what I did in Dan Mullen's system last season, this is what I can do again. A couple other positions as well where you're not having to rely so much on transfers, but Dan Mullen and his ability to coach up a team for individual matchups and get them focused to out-execute the opponent, he is the perfect coach for this era at this level. I think he could be able to contend for the Mountain West pretty much every single season as long as he continues to have the support of that UNLV community.
Chip, I'm right there agreeing right with you wholeheartedly. When you look at Dan Mullen and everything that he's done to this program, he has a chance to take them from a great story to a sustainable program by doing it year after year. And I think that's what he's building towards. He has the resources. He's going to be able to go out and recruit the players or the underlooked guys that may be looked by the group of 4 conferences, or sorry, the Power 4 conferences. Dan Mullen knows how to get the most out of players. We've seen him do it on the big levels. We've seen him get you to a conference championship game. And like you said, he's going to be certainly in a discussion year after year to be in this Mountain West Conference. He's going to be a team that, or UNLV is going to be a team that you have to worry about down the stretch, because they are going to be making a push at a college football playoff spot coming out of that Group of Six conference.
Yeah, the team they lost to in the conference championship, Boise State, no longer a member of the Mountain West. So paving the way for the Rebs to potentially win that conference title. But before we get there, let's talk back to the game at hand that's happening this Saturday. You're each going to give me a player to watch. Chip, you've got UNLV. Beanie, I'm going to have you follow with Memphis. And Chip, just like Charles Huff is not telling us what's happening with the quarterbacks, neither is Dan Mullen. So what are we looking out for from the QB position?
This is player to capital W watch, because it is players to watch, because this is going to dictate whether or not I believe UNLV is going to have the consistency to be able to make it to the college football playoff, because they've had Jackson Arnold and Alex Orji engaged in a quarterback battle. And I've gone to look at some of these post-camp availabilities, and at times when Dan Mullen is describing this quarterback competition, my opinion, he looks exasperated. Like, golly, I wish one of these guys would just grab hold of this job. Because Jackson Arnold came from Oklahoma and Auburn and was a blue chip prospect, there was an assumption, obviously wrong, that he was going to step right into the starting job. It is a credit to Alex Orji, the former Michigan quarterback who was also on the UNLV roster last year, that he's been able to continue to make this such a battle. Last season, we saw Dan Mullen say that it was a true battle between Anthony Calandria and Alex Orji, only to drift more to the Calandria side of things. defense. That's what we're watching here. Is it a true battle? Is it a two-quarterback system? Or does it drift towards Jackson Arnold with Alex Orji maintaining a presence with specific packages? This is potentially one of the best quarterback rooms at the entire group of six level, but they've got to be able to execute it. There's a reason why our former Michigan and Auburn quarterbacks are at UNLV. They need to show their best and not the reasons why they ended up transferring down.
Chip, you're talking about quarterbacks right there. So my player to watch that is going to be so critical for, this football game is Jamon Tapp. You're talking about quarterbacks and, them naming a guy and running the dual quarterback system where you're going to have somebody get pressures on those quarterbacks. And I think Jamon Tapp is going to do just that. Here he is, a transfer guy, over 70 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 10 quarterback hurries, a guy that can really disrupt an offensive line, their continuity from the start of a football game. And if they're going to have an opportunity being in Memphis to win this football game, it's going to be due in part to what Jamon Tapp is able to do and the pressure that he's able to cause on this quarterback system.
I like it. You guys really in sync there for your answers. Now it's time for the game prediction where you're also in sync. Beanie, I'll let you have first word. Who you got?
I got UNLV. I just think they're going to be too dynamic in this football game. I got them winning 31-24. I do think Memphis scores, and they do, get some momentum going on the offensive end, but UNLV is going to be too much at the end of this football game.
Beanie, I got 31-17, and I think that the piece that I am most interested in is whether or not we do end up seeing this Memphis team held under 20 points. That was the 17 is what I was really hooked on, where I was wondering if maybe UNLV has a little bit of an off-speed pitch for us. Maybe they're coming in with a defense that can be really, really dynamic. If they are able to hold Memphis under 20 points, that should be a wake-up call to the rest of their schedule, that this is a group that's not just trying to go out there and outscore you, which absolutely happened at times with UNLV. They got to 10 wins, not by playing defense, but by just outscoring opponents. If they're able to keep Memphis a little bit bottled up, I think that would be a big-time signal for us to take note of. It's my prediction, but it's also one that I'm waiting to see if it plays out.
Well, we'll have to wait until Saturday late night for this one. Chip, Beanie, we appreciate you getting us ready to go. Week 0 is finally here, which means the Cover 3 podcast dropping some locks in your feed. They are back in mid-season form. Check them out by scanning that QR code, or you can listen wherever you find your podcasts.